Do you really think you can make a difference in the wrongs in this world? I'm here to convince you guys that you can, why you should, how you should, and some things that might get in your way as you go out to make a difference in this world, and I think in St. Louis in particular. So I want to start with the easy question. Can you make a difference? Absolutely. Yes. You can definitely make a difference. And I think the three clear ways you can make a difference is what I call the 3 T's. Either with your time, your talents, or your treasure. So first, let's talk about time. On a Tuesday night, I have the decision to watch a few hours of Breaking Bad and catch up on that show, which I heard was phenomenal, and I never got to finish it, or I could fart around on Facebook for a couple hours. Or I could mentor a student, a young 19-year-old man who grows up in North St. Louis, who doesn't have a bank account yet, and who doesn't know how to drive. And I could teach him how to drive in those couple hours, and we could go to the bank and we could set up a bank account. There's no doubt that would make a difference in his life. It would have a domino effect on his family's life, and it would have a ripple effect on our city. I can make a difference with my talents. I have a video production company, and I have equipment and experience. I can make, a commercial to sell a product, which is not a bad thing at all, put a little more jingle in my pocket. Or I could go on a little less that month, and I could decide to make a video for a nonprofit, do it pro bono. Some nonprofit is saying, we don't know how to get our message out. We don't know how to show people the work we are doing on the ground. They don't see it, so they're not able to partner with that vision. So I can take those skills, those talents, and I can make that video that thousands, if not tens of thousands of people would see, and it would inspire them to partner with that organization. Or you take my treasure. This is maybe the harder one to explain, but your treasure is what you value. It's your car, your home, your money. I think for me, one of the clearest examples of how you can make a difference with your money in the world is the issue of unclean water. I think it just stands out. This is a woman in India who just now had access to clean water. And who knows how far she had to walk before she had this water. Who knows what diseases she brought to her family, to her kids because of unclean water. So for the amount I take my wife out for dinner, if we're lucky and we only get like a drink, one wine, and we split it, maybe it's about $30. For that same $30, I could give someone like this lady clean water. They say there's about 7.2 billion people in our world, and 800 million of them don't have access to clean water. That's about 1 in 9 people that don't have the thing that we can just go stick our head under any faucet pretty much and drink. Literally, we can probably drink out of most of our toilets before some of these people could have access to clean water. The 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure. I think it's obvious we can all make a difference. But I think for some of us is why. It's not my fault that lady didn't have clean water. It's not my fault there's a disparity in poverty. And so I would challenge you with this question. What breaks your heart? What, when you drive through St. Louis, when you watch the nightly news, do you see that and you say, that should not be that way? It could be poverty, it could be crime, it could be drugs, it could be something as simple as the traffic that breaks your heart. I'm sure a lot of us, you're late for work, this is breaking my heart. Being that you're a TEDx audience, I'm guessing, why should I make a difference is not your question. I think for a lot of us, the question is how. Okay, I know I can make a difference, and I know I want to make a difference, but where do I start? And I think the answer to that question is, what makes you come alive? What do you just love doing? What is maybe a gift or a talent that you were born with or you've developed, that's been praised in you, that you can offer to the world? One of my favorite quotes is a guy named Howard Thurman. He says, don't ask yourself what the world needs, but ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is for people to come alive. So what makes me come alive is filmmaking. When I'm filming something, when I'm editing something that I truly believe in, it doesn't feel like a job. It doesn't feel like a career. It feels like my purpose. And so I think the goal is to take those 2 things. What breaks your heart? The thing you say, that should not be that way. What makes you come alive? And how can you put those 2 things together? This idea is nothing new. It's as old as Western thought. Aristotle said, where your talent and the needs of the world cross, therein lies your vocation. Therein lies where you should use your time, your talent, or your treasure to make a difference. I tried to think of some examples in history of people who were answering the 2 questions, or Y2Qing as we call it. And what better example than Martin Luther King Jr.? I think what obviously broke his heart, and he even explained in that speech, was that the Constitution said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And as he looked out his window, as he watched the news, he saw the people who looked like him were not being treated equal. They were not let in the same places on the buses. People who were supposed to protect them, the police were spraying them with hoses. He looked out and he said, that should not be that way. And then I tried to guess what made him come alive. And obviously I never met the guy, so I would have no idea what made him come alive. But I think as you see him in the capital of our country doing that speech. You can see preaching makes him come alive. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And as he says, I have a dream that one day my 4 children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Can't help but to just tear up a little bit. What breaks my heart is young people without a purpose. Because at one time I was a young person without a purpose. I was consumed with what my friends thought about me. I was consumed with the escape that drugs and alcohol and a number of different things provided. And as I've worked with youth in the county and as I've worked with youth in the city, I've seen that same thing. Young people trying to find something bigger than themselves, trying to find a purpose. And I saw myself in them, and that was what broke my heart. And I thought it was pretty obvious, filmmaking was what made me come alive. Seeing people have to shut up for like an hour and a half and just sit in a dark room and hear what you have to say is pretty awesome to get to have that experience. So what my company, Speak Up Production, tries to do is to connect those who need something to live for with those who just need something to live. So we make films about extreme poverty, about human trafficking, and trying to connect young people saying, you have so much to live for. You have so much to do. There's a world needing your input and your action. One of my favorite quotes is by a guy named Shane Claiborne. He said, if we lose kids to a culture of drugs and violence, it isn't because we didn't entertain them. It is because we didn't dare them. That's me in the bottom left, if you can't tell. And that's my cousin, Steven, making an awesome face there. And he was probably the closest thing I had to a brother, because I'm an only child, I'm my brother's sisters. And he had my same last name, kind of looked like me. And he was one of those guys, I never got enough of him. I never wanted him to leave the room. I always wanted him to hang out longer, talk longer, just be him longer. And everything he did, he touched, was like he turned to gold. Like I'd call him up and be like, I'm learning to rollerblade. He's like, oh yeah, well, I just did my first backflip on a half pipe. I'd call him up and I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm biking, We're building big ramps and I'm hitting these ramps. He's like, yeah, we got some ramps. And I go down there and he's doing 360s off this ramp. And I'm like, oh. He's always one up on me. I remember challenging him in basketball. And he just kicked the crap out of me. It was so bad. But everything we did, he always one step ahead of me. This is us in 2010 after my plane accident, and I lost about 45 pounds at that point, and we hung out. He told me, man, this is just part of the struggle. This is just part of the greater story, And it really helped me move on. So I was struggling. I was trying to do a lot of things, trying to make a difference, and I felt like everything was working against me, and he really encouraged me. So in 2011, my dad called me out of nowhere. I was hanging out with some friends, and he tells me Steven committed suicide. And I always expected a call, like, he'd be in a car accident, or he got in a fight, or he got shot. He lived just the wildest life. I always imagined he would go out kind of in a blaze of glory, but I never thought that he would take his own life. And I hit the ground, and just tears flooded. Like tears that don't start, in your face or even in the top of your chest, but really lower in your stomach. And over the next few weeks, I experienced emotions that I had never experienced before. I was angry at someone who wasn't even there anymore. How can you be angry at someone who isn't there? And as I reached out for help on just the pain that I was dealing with and grief, I discovered the 5 stages of grief: denial and anger and depression and bargaining, and the final stage of acceptance. And I had all of them. I show up at his funeral. I'm sure he's playing a prank on us. I'm sure he's just going to show up and say, that ain't me, gotcha! And I was angry. Who was he to take his own life, that wasn't his. He has a child, or actually several children and a wife. And I was just depressed. I was just like, well, if he isn't here anymore, why am I still here? What am I supposed to be doing? And then I went to the bargaining stage where I was like, well, if only I would have called him, or if only I would have went down there, if only I wouldn't have said this, done that. But then finally I had to reach a stage of acceptance where I said, he's gone, and how would he want me to live? And I thought back to this night, where he's like, it was just part of the struggle. And he encouraged me to go on. It made me think of the film Shawshank Redemption, where they're outside and leaning against the wall in jail, and he says, get busy living or get busy dying. And I felt like my cousin would be like, get busy living. Help people like myself who are struggling. Help those young people without a purpose. Do your mission. Don't stop. Keep going. And so as I got back on the saddle, I looked at those same stages of grief and I realized, but these are some of the things that I face and I'm sure other activists face. When I say activist, that just means someone trying to do a forward action, trying to make a difference. And I thought, I think these same emotions that I was feeling is the same emotions people go through when they try to make a difference in the world. And the first one is denial. Denial is the changing of the channel. When that infomercial comes on, click. Big brothers and big sisters need some mentors to volunteer, click. These dogs need a dog, click. And though your heart's breaking, though somebody's affecting you, you're changing that channel, you're moving on. And I think that prick in your heart was there for a reason. And I think the solution to denial is getting close. Getting close to the issue that breaks your heart. Go volunteer at Big Brothers, Big Sisters. For me, going to Africa for the first time and meeting people, living on $1.25 a day, I got close. I saw the issue. It was no longer just an infomercial. It was no longer just something I could think of over there. I knew the people. I had made relationships. But just like I went through when I came back from Africa, a lot of times we deal with anger. I came back, I'm like, oh, look at those people driving their Mercedes and their Lexuses, and people are dying over there in the world. And then I look at myself, and here I am with my $4 coffee, and I know this would give someone 4 people a meal per day. And I wanted to be one of those activists that just had the megaphone and was like Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine, and Rage Against the Machine fans here. I mean, the guy was so full of passion. I just wanted to rile people up and get them all pumped up to just break something. I don't really know. But though I saw that anger had so much passion, it was also exhausting and really an ineffective motivator. I think this guy's a great example. Sadly, he's got a Cardinal shirt on. I wonder how many people followed him after that day, A little side note, I actually did a little research into this, and I think Moran's actually might be like a politician, and so he actually might have spelled it right, and it was like he was being clever, so the joke was on us. And he actually has a Twitter, we found it, and we done like, hey, I'm doing a presentation, can I use your picture? All he wrote was, granted. You gotta look like a man of few words. But I think a lot of us move from that anger stage to that depression stage. One of my favorite quotes is from Inconvenient Truth. Al Gore said, the danger is that people will go from denial to despair without stopping in between to ask themselves what action they can take. And as I looked at these 5 stages, I think you can go out of order. A lot of people, like he's saying, skip anger, just go from denial to depression. Just get burnt out on an issue. And then you can go in all kinds of different orders. And my hope today is that you go from denial to acceptance. Skip some of these things in the middle by asking these 2 questions. For me, I experienced depression when I started trying to do activism for Darfur. I started going to these conferences and doing all these events. Everybody's got a different idea how to solve it. And then I'm like, we're in college. What are we going to do about genocide in Africa, And you just get really down on yourself. And kind of like, I can't really do anything. What kind of difference can I actually make? And I got stuck in that depression stage. But I think the best way out of depression is really to act, to move. I truly think it is better to give than to receive. So most of us end up in bargaining stage. The best way that I've heard it explained is this if-only stage. If only so-and-so president wouldn't be in office, we wouldn't have this issue. If only fill-in-the-blank multinational corporation wouldn't have such and such policy, we wouldn't have this issue. All these if-onlys. And I think a lot of times it leads to what I call like a savior complex, where you got one person trying to attack every single different issue. We all know them. They have like their car full of bumper stickers and buttons everywhere, and they're on every issue all the time. And then there's also the silver bullet idea, that one thing will solve it. If we just do this one thing, that will end it. The final stage, and where I hope we all get to, is the stage of acceptance. Where we realize we only have so much talent, so much time, and so much money that we need to focus our efforts on what breaks our heart and what makes us come alive. And the big vision is really kind of reminding me of vocab tests. We got the words on one side and the definitions on another, and you go through and you connect the words to the definitions. But in this case, we have the things that break our hearts on the left side, and the things that make us come alive on the right. So let's say young people without a purpose. And we connect those two. And we put my name on there. Poor education and administration. We put our Julia's name on there. And one by one, these names add up to start to fill this issue. So instead of one person trying to do a ton of things, and a bunch of us doing nothing, each of us are focused on what we were meant to do. This is kind of what the whole idea of the Your 2 Questions website is about. remember anything, if you fell asleep during this and you just woke up, ask yourself 2 questions. What breaks your heart? What makes you come alive? And figure out a way to put those 2 things together. Thank you.